favour, and similar-ish zones this time, Levan, but they were able.
Yes, again, a very good game from them, and I don't. Casper here. I know Reese is about. What I'm about to say next. Reese is going to be Casper hater, but okay, I would like to point out. Yes, the wasn't directly on Fort Crumpet. It was near Slurpy Swamp, is where we ended. So the zone pulled slightly further away from them, and the placement they got in the game was slightly worse. It was still a good game. It was still a good game.
I can't believe you say that.
But just
I can't believe you say that. You're such a hater. I would never make that exact same analytical point that you were about to make. I would never do that.
Okay. Can I say though? They got 6 elims because they only had 1 in the first game. So they put up some numbers this time.
Yeah, no, honestly, it's a really great start for them. A team that made it to Globals in, 2024, I think it was, right? And again, when things went to trios, like fell into the weeds as being a top EU team, it's good to see both of them, again, maybe making their rise here in Reload and showing that they are still 2 top dogs in the EU.
I am surprised by the lack of eliminations we're seeing early in the game. Also surprised by the amount of high ground chaos, because that last game 11 was absolutely ridiculous. It felt like no teams could really establish it when you would expect them to, and then from there on, like iDrop and Marius tried and again got chopped. It was like a Linkin Park song by the end. In the end, it didn't really matter.
It was crazy. Great reference. Reese, we've been talking about throwbacks with me and you back on the desk together. Yeah. What this is reminding me is back in Chapter 2 days when we used to do this, and you'd always have game 1 of grand finals in FNCS would always be a team up on height, nobody touches them, nobody looks at them. That was Midra last game, right? Game 2, you'd always get every team in the lobby going, wait, game 1 height was free, we've got to try it. And we have the exact same paradigm today where every team, it felt like they were going for height that changed so many times there.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we might sit here and say, from game 1, the team won because they're on height and now they knew. These players know that playing high ground's fine, but if we actually saw our best teams in the lobby in this game had a much better position to be on height. They were way more stacked. Like TD and Shark is a good example of there. Tried to take height I want to say 15 times. Maybe I'm under exaggerating. I'm not even exaggerating here. Maybe
so many times, yeah.
Exactly.
It was crazy.
Now they're up to 1-0 builds, but they played it earlier, did nothing. Somehow got chopped, repeated. I have no idea how they got to a top 3, by the way, with only a single elim, by using so many maps, repeatedly trying to take height.
Sorry, I'm just in shock as well.
It doesn't get old. It just literally does not get old. Seeing how many times TD kept going for that high ground. I was also obsessed with just seeing Podicide.
I have no idea how they got to a top 3, by the way, with only a single elim, by using so many mats, repeatedly trying to take height.
Sorry, I'm just...
game first, because this is the second game in a row that he's managed to make it far and make it so impressive. Levan.
Yeah, again, not as great of a first game from them, but look, if we actually take a look here, because we got the clip, Pablo started off this game landing that Slurpee, and for the people who don't know, that's not where he was landing game 1 or where he was projected to land. Now, this is actually a pretty cool tactic that we've not seen anyone use yet until now, Reese, which is obviously with the respawn mechanic, when you go down, you respawn wherever your teammate is. So you can split drop, right? If you are uncontested off spawn at your POI, one of you can just land anywhere else on the map. Go down, you just know you'll respawn on top of your teammate, right? Which they took advantage of to potentially try and get some eliminations. Pablo did go down, but had he got an elimination and went down, that's an extra 3 points. That could be the difference later down in the tournament.
And it's interesting because they didn't do it in game 1, and the reason is they don't know what's going on at their own drop spot, right? So game 1, you might have 2-3 teams landing there, but now going into game number 2, they know no one's contesting them at Logjam over to the west, so they can make a play like this where they can just decide, you know what? I might get a sneaky elim point. They didn't, and it didn't work whatsoever. But at the end of the day, it didn't matter too much for them across the leaderboard.
I've got a question for you boys. Do you think we're going to see the triple Twerk and Midori? Because they have had such a fantastic start, a flawless start to the day. But are they going to do a third and potentially secure their spot at the finals, Levan?
I don't know, but I really want to see it. I want it to happen. I love stories like this where you just get a team come from absolutely nowhere.
That would be insane. I'm so impressed, right? That clip we just saw, I'm so impressed there because Twerk this is going to sound super minor. When he went to edit on the player who was pickaxing on the wall, he took his time. He was slow, which means he's not panicking. He's not doing anything crazy. So obviously they're calm and collected. It's all okay. 3 in a row now. I'm not buying into the hype just yet.
I am, which is why I'm going to throw it to 3 with Taco Takata.
Hype's already there. Even if they don't find a third Victor Royale in a row, Takata, just finding the back-to-back in this caliber of a lobby has already basically cemented them as a very obvious threat for the remainder of this Reload Elite Series finals.
Yeah, and this is a duo that doesn't have a single FNCS finals appearance, and now they're getting back-to-back wins in the Reload finals. Like, hello? How are they doing this? Look, 3 hat trick. I don't know. I might be on Reese boats here, a little too good to be true, but remember, it is top 3 to that Reload Elite Series championship LAN, where they get to compete for a whole other $1 million prize pool.
And the battle bus is ready to go. Jumping straight into it. All of our teams now a little bit better prepared in terms of what to expect from those first couple of lobbies. But Takata, we could also see some switch ups. I mean, Levin made a great point. Pablo trying to go for that initial split drop strategy, but it might also be extending the invitation for the same to happen to him and Chino if they're not careful.
Hold on. Now we got Sato in the mix. Look, Levin was alluding to this too. I think we even saw it in the Pro-Am where the pros would go frag out and just leave their teammate to kind of have their loot ready if the reboot had to come through. iDrop, though, gonna pick up Malabuka now. Quick elimination on the board, but Slurpee is getting chaotic. Sato's mission didn't last too long as Vico falls as well.
This is tragic for Vico and Malabuka. Just clear elimination so early on. Matty is now going to be forced to disengage, given that iDrop was taken out, but Flixie, Chap, choosing to pressure directly into the heart of Slurpee Swamp. They seize their opportunity the moment that they recognize that Malabuka had been eliminated. Vico also falling incredibly low here. But Marius and iDrop, they will get a little bit of breathing room since Marius was able to find those first couple of eliminations. But with Chap and Flixie so close, darn Deemish too, I mean, almost anything can happen at this point in Slurpee, but that is a massive blow. Malabuka and Vico being forced to just kind of sit out this entire lobby, and we've already seen just how detrimental one placement can be. So to not have any in an entire lobby, they've got their work cut out for them for playing catch up.
100%. I like the positioning too for fucking Mijos drop. I mean, it's close to Dom and Deemish. Center map is perfect for reload. As we see Sky and Scroll, not the best start from them, but we're still very early on in this tournament, so anything can still happen, and not being contested gives you kind of a bit of that freedom to play it slow in the early game, get all the resources you need for later, as Pix and Comeback might be looking for a sneaky play.
They are just steady lurking on Casper and Prism. And Prism, that's a big 100 shot, no shields. But it's not what Pix and Comic had initially been hoping for. They wanted to get the outright drop, the outright panic. Still, Prism just trying to reunite with this duo. He needs Casper to play a little bit of backup here. A lot of pressure application right now, though. And Casper, Prism, they'll still manage to hold through for the time being. Casper instead going to go on the aggressive now. Pix forced to revert his initial strategy, and he's just going to have to fall back entirely. Now he's the one trying to just play for a little bit more of shield healing. And Comeback, they'll take the reins now. But the material count is incredibly low for Pix and Comeback. Got a side angle shot. Casper coming up big time. That's going to be a nice elimination here. Pix and Comeback, what initially seemed like it was going to be a sneak opportunity purely in their favor, now has left them fully on the retreat.
Using up that shockwave bailout. Kind of make a comeback here. Good news is there's no duos around them, so they're once again, the issue is recuperating these resources quick enough before you kind of have to get closer to the more established duos in the zone, but definitely could be a lot worse as Pablo and Chino now look to be hunting down a player themselves.
Yeah, right, there's just nowhere left to run. Chino almost playing with his food right there. But 2 eliminations now for Pablo and Chino. They've done a decent job at working things through from their starting point over Far West and Logjam. But she's only the foot right now for Multi and Snozq. They're having to go up against Sato and Momzi. Sato seems like he wants to just immediately barrel into the box here, but still wants to be wary, doesn't want to give away any sort of opening shots. A big exchange between Sato and Multi, and that's going to send Multi to immediately fall back here. Snozq now looking to see if he can maybe capitalize on Sato having taken such a huge chunk of his HP. But with Momzi right behind, it's going to be all too easy for them to separate one more time. And Momzi still having a little bit of leverage with that overhead POV.
A lot of close quarters combat as Shark making use of an SMG. It's interesting. In standard VR, ARs and shotguns are basically identical in terms of damage dealt. But in Reload, shotguns did 4 times more damage than ARs. So quite a difference. But like we mentioned earlier, Taco, this is a completely new playing ground in these final lobbies. You can't take what we saw in opens, what we saw in heats, to decide what's going to happen here. Shark and Teeny have been loving the high ground retakes, using everything they can utility-wise to make it happen. So I think one of these games, they're bound to take it.
I don't know that I would say loving it, given that they were constantly chopped, had to burn all of their materials to even look for those positions. If anything, they clearly want the high ground. They clearly enjoy holding high ground, but that is going to be a struggle if it's anything like what we saw in that secondary lobby with the constant swap outs of height. But Chino and Pablo, they know what kind of an end game they've got to really settle themselves up for. I did like that initial appearance, though, from Twek and Midro, kind of trying to see how far of a territory stake are you trying to make as Shark and Teeny, but not looking to overextend their position. Those are just a couple of, like, leaderboard heavy hitters right now, and Darm Demish not too far behind. I believe they were sitting in that 3rd place position, and they've had at minimum 3 elims in all of their heat games. Today they've started off with 7. It is clear that they know exactly how to get scrappy with it, and they have zero fear with taking fights.
You know, we've seen how important it is format-wise as well to get a good amount of eliminations consistently. Unless, you know, you're Twek and Midro and you just get back-to-back wins, but Sky and Scroll now looking for a little bit more of a sneaky play, and once again just continuing to play as passive as possible, not putting themselves in those risky situations, just kind of waiting for the opportunity to come to them.
It's almost uncanny, though, to their usual play style, at least not from what we are witnessing out of them inside of their heat groups. And that's, I understand that, you know, obviously in a set lobby finals, you know that the competition is going to be leveled up just all that much higher. But at the same time, you don't want to lose your identity necessarily as a duo. I'm really waiting to see if they can find their rhythm, because it just doesn't look like they've really locked into their flow state just yet.
Good news is they got a lot of time to do so. Minori, Darkos, kind of following behind Hero and Ping here. But they've got a long ways to go, making themselves a good little rotate into zone without having any focus put onto them.
Ping and Kiro investing a little bit of hard builds, just really trying to make it very unlikely for anybody to actually want to aggress them, letting them know, hey, we're healthy, we're stacked, we're in a good spot. We don't need to force the issue just yet. Chap and Flicky still holding on to that early elimination. Haven't had to travel too far either from that west side of Slurpee Swamp, but kind of keeping Marius and iDrop in the rearview mirror here. Pablo, Chino, also a couple of later stragglers here, but it's Lusha and Mappy who have really been struggling to find their footing in this lobby. Seems like they're just being held by a couple of different teams on the way in. Marius and iDrop now noticing that they become a little bit of a lobby focus here, but it's really just about keeping Lusha and Mappy at bay.
Yeah, there's a bit of action now behind them as well with the players who finally made it towards the zone, but a lot of the duos that are already boxed up aren't actually looking that side from the players that are rotated in. Still quite a large section to play with here. This comeback and picks hopefully have been able to recover from what happened earlier before. Looks like they have a bit of mobility and they might just be going for a full-on refresh as the shot is not going to connect from picks, but now the box fight's going to come through as the third-party action from afar is also pressured onto them.
They lost their opening though. That was they had the element of surprise with the crash pads. It's you can't really tell when a player is about to crash pad on top of your noggin, but when the shots don't hit, you're just left to go next. Essentially here, Twek and Midro though making good use of space around them, kind of taking over little building territory north of lockdown, but I think more importantly still, Takada, is just we have seen a pretty good spread of talent between the way that they choose to play the high ground, the way that they choose to play the low. It's just about manifesting that consistency. And it's crazy to think that, and I could be wrong on this, but I do believe there are actually a couple of controller players.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's interesting too. Reese was even pointing out they didn't even seem too nervous in those final moments in the end game, taking their time to land their big hitting shots. But now with back-to-back wins, you know, they've got a bit of that fire fueling them with confidence. So hopefully it doesn't kind of cause them to overstep themselves and make a risky play that ends up with them getting eliminated. But we're getting closer and closer to that end game, closer and closer to the reboots getting disabled. Once the 6th zone closed and 7th appears, it is going to be when reload is no longer active.
Prism and Casper just lurking in the wings right now. No one close enough that they feel it necessary to try and go for any sort of brawl, but the moment the zone pools, that's what we're really waiting to see, because everyone's going to start to make their rotates and things are going to get messy, Takada, because reboots disabled. Anyone that goes down now, it is all up to your duo to try and lock things in for placement and elimination points. Midro and Twek just look so isolated, though, compared to the rest of the lobby from that overhead shot. A really good perspective. It's all about trying to defend kind of the spacing that you initially opt for, but Sky, Scroll, also got a good amount of gear to work with, plenty of mobility inside their current box.
All right. The good news about shockwaves is you can, you know, elevate yourself quite a bit if you tend or end up using them here. But what's difficult is you really just want to be able to land somewhere that not everybody else is going to land at the same time as you when this zone starts opening up a bit more. And you also, one, don't really want to be the first one to get focused or the last one. But Darm and Demish are doing a good time recycling the builds from their opponent in front of them, making sure to kind of keep that dominant position above them, able to take shots at them as Kiro and Ping are already in.
Minori and Darko is trying to see if they can do the same. Sky, Scroll. Sky getting a little bit lit up there by Ping. Will manage to get out of dodge, though, without taking too much further threats here. But Scroll and Sky are just so wary right now. They're not trying to go for immediate front side just yet. Demish and Darm just a little bit too set in their current position. But Champ and Flixie, you have to imagine that they're going to start taking notice of the high ground. Mini chop there for Darm and Demish. They won't have any issues with reestablishing the elbow this until Darm actually losing a fat chunk of his HP. But he knows he's been in this situation plenty of times before, but the lobby has fixated on them. They can tell that this is a duo under duress right now, and Darm, Slurp Juice will be forcibly used as Midro, Twek continue kind of just hovering around that front side low. Maybe a big opportunity for them to kind of pop up towards those high ground takes, especially with the way that Shark and Teeny were causing so much chaos, constantly challenging for it.
And I'm sure it's going to happen again this time around, as nobody's fully claimed it yet. They know the danger of it in these zones, but Twek and Midro alluding to go under the bridge. They've actually conserved a good amount of mats, making sure to cut off any players behind them and even get a bit of time to refarm. But it looks like Mapi, Lucia, they are going to be the ones up above.
It's not just about taking height, though. It's making sure that you can pressure enough of those lower layers to prevent them from trying to do the same to you. Don't want to afford to get chopped out. Slurpy Swamp's also just going to make it a little bit easier. I mean, the building's already being present. A little bit easier to connect to overhead as Matthew Lusher, they continue just extending upwards. Chino, Pablo, small spot of trouble here. They don't want to get cut off on this next rotate, but they might not have a choice. Chino just trying to extend to whatever space he can. There is not a whole lot of room to dart through.
Bro.
It's only a matter of time. Shockwave's forward, just going to try and head immediately towards that. Just connecting. Asa maybe contemplate if you want the challenges, but Twag and Midro, they just drop big straight into their box. Shark and Teeny trying to see if they can maybe overtake, but it's a complete cutoff here. Twag and Midro do an excellent job of just finding that elimination, and Teeny, it's going to come at a price here as he finds himself getting cleared out of the lobby.
Shark left alone now. Fucking Mijo still looking strong though, alongside Gino Pablo. Gonna have to shockwave through, but oh no, I spoke too soon. Mijo goes down. Tweg, Shark now both playing as solos. The medkit's gonna be popped. Good news, as he does have that men miss grenade. If he wants to, he can tank a bit of zone, but if he can even save it for later, it could be better. He's still got some mats to work with. No need to rush anything here.
Those heals were clearly intended for playing heal off in the third lobby, and that's just not going to be the case for Twig. They'll be forced to drop that Memphis grenade early on, but now everyone else in the vicinity, they're going to know this is a player in trouble. Whether or not they actually look to challenge it right away, that's a different conversation. Sky, Scroll, directly underneath. Tweg playing from the backside of zone, though. It's only a matter of time before people realize that this is a solo player just trying to hold his own. He needs every single placement he can get, even eliminations, to continue extending their first place position on the leaderboard. But I fear it may have been too much to expect them to go for the hat trick finish here. Takada, his last medkit now being used. Prism and Casper are going to challenge for the high ground, but it's Prism who gets eliminated. Casper scattering, now going straight up overhead, trying to utilize that Nimbus grenade underneath them. But Lusha and Mappy have done a great job at just holding on to height. Shockwave didn't take him exactly what they wanted to go. Instead, Lusha, he's going to be sent backwards. He's got to get forward. He doesn't have anyone heals. The Siphon will save him temporarily, and he does manage to reconnect. But now Shark from behind, lurking in the water, just ready to strike. Mappy doesn't have any shield, but he does have his duo and Flixie overhead to boot.
Sharky, even without his teammate, going once again for height. He's not going to give it up, trying to fight down his prey. His Chap is the first victim. He gets another, but unable to finish those eliminations. Flixie now playing alone up top as his teammates gone down. He drops below, finishes off the elimination, and now has a huge refresh to continue forwards.
So greedy by Mappy to try and get off everybody. It's so tempting, though, when it's so quick inside of reloads. But Sky, Scroll, this could be the one. They are very low on their material counts, but they've managed to find an isolated position. And Minotti bouncing back up and down again, but Flixie will claim another. These are huge refreshes because now Sky, Scroll, they're ready to take out Flixie. The only one left standing, and Scroll, excellent placements with the Shockwave, immediately breaking through all those free existing builds. Flixie held his own, though, Takada. That was an impressive finish.
I was getting a little nervous, okay? Sky and Scroll, they weren't looking too great, but the Danish Demons have done it, solidifying themselves up above. So let's head right back over to the desk so they can break that down for us.
Thank you very much. There were big expectations for Sky and Scroll going into this first qualifying final for the Reload Elite Series, and finally they have made good on that promise, Levin.
Yeah, it's good to see them announce themselves to the lobby and winning a performance that we sort of expected, right? Rich, you talked a lot about how their strategy and approach to Reload has a lot been playing on those lower layers, trying to avoid the chaos or shockwaves, and we saw them sort of close out the game there, which was just as you expected.
Well, I mean, one of the things that they always do, I say they play the low ground to avoid it, but they always keep a shockwave. One of the ways they win most of the games in the opens or in their heats has just been holding on to a shockwave from that final moment just to knock out teams, take a height retake, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I love those moments at the end of the games, right, where it's all just about like trying to shock your opponents back into the storm and take them away. Look, these guys are going to continue to have games like this, right? I think as far as consistency goes, when they are in these positions, they're so comfortable. Scroll here, his form has been unbelievable this year. And so again, this is where like their comfort zone is. This is where you expect to see them thrive. And this is what you were talking about here, right? That ability to just go up towards the end. You gotta have some, right? You gotta have some. Even if you're avoiding people doing it to you, you want to make sure you have the option to do it yourself. So big first game here. Again, 2 players, many people around the world in Fortnite expecting to see competing at that final.
I think it's very important. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's
They were
okay.
11th before this. So not doing great, let's be honest. 11th before this should be a huge jump off them in the leaderboard.
I'm just wondering, and I was going to jump in to just ask Reese, do we want to see these guys play it safe literally until those end games to guarantee themselves a high placement on the leaderboard?
Absolutely, that's like their bread and butter strategy. You know, the first 2 games didn't necessarily go out that well for them. That match for me is just everything I love from
Hold on, guys. Bro, my fault. I mean, I still have to upload. I think I might just wait and go back to EWC.
Role helped me along in my hypothesis because they did take our third game of today's Reload Elite Series qualifier. But let's
They came out of the match and they were fifth place coming into this as well. So coming into like the game 3 that we just watched there's obviously been a lot of change up in the strats. Players playing way more aggressive to get a couple cheeky early game points.
Well, I think all of this cheekiness is allowing some dark horses to slip through the net into the end game because Dark Horse and Minori, I think they came in game number 2. They just come in the top 3 of this game as well. And they're slowly making their way up the leaderboard race.
Yeah, and it's impressive from them because they're the kind of team that I knew nothing about coming into this. I'll be totally honest, you know. As we mentioned for some of our other teams like Twek and Vidro, right? You know, who's putting these guys in the top 10? And I haven't put these guys into mine either, so see them pop off is interesting. You know, I was wondering to see exactly what the strategy was, and earlier on to this match, they were playing a bunch of the Storm with the medkits, similar to what Twek and Vidro has already been doing in those first 2 matches as well.
Yeah, I think they did a good job of being able to just save a lot of their resources to just keep them ticking in the game for a lot longer, right? Like in that game, at times it did get a bit hectic, but they had so many mats they were able to just play them out and just stay alive as long as they possibly could.
And we had a theory earlier on in the show about Casper and Prism, the zones, you know, at the start of today's lobby, falling in favor. Perhaps they're going to fall out of contention now that the zones aren't quite as favourable, Levin. They really need something to be over at Fort Crumpet for them to make good potentially in game number 4.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was another game that ended that Slurpee to be, which was the same as game 2. So it was a similar zone, but again, a bit of a more difficult performance, right? They struggled again, and it was a bit of a worse game. They tried to play for height. You see, it didn't quite go too well. So again, at the end of the day, with game 3, it's not panic stations, but yeah, like you want to see these guys figure out how to have cleaner games, right? When it's not pulling towards Fort Crumpet, for sure.
Yeah, you can see they've dropped a lot, right? They've gone down 4 places now into 6th place. And I think it kind of just shows a lot of just how difficult the end games in Reload truly are. It feels like they're 50% of each match. I know they're not, quite literally, but it feels like they just keep going on and on and on and on. And if you're unable to get a good early refresh, it's very, very difficult to play out to like a top 2, to a top 3, you know? If you get a refresh in the 9th zone, relatively early into the moving zones, the likelihood of you getting a ton of mats is high, right? Because everyone else has a ton of mats at that time. If you're able to just kind of play that match out, able to get that at any point, it's so easy for that just to fizzle out because you're playing 5 minutes of an end game over and over again.
So we saw some adaptation in game 3. Reese, I want to stick with you. You're the adapting expert, it feels like. Do you think we're going to see a change in approach from the likes of Vico and Malabuka going into game 4?
I do hope so. That's what I'm going to say, because it's not looking good right now. 20th, he's going to be in some seriously poor mental state when we have to play a tournament right after this. So I want to see some adaptation from him.
Oh, let's hope we can get there. We're going to go into game number 4 with Daco and Takata.
Thank you, Frankie. Reese hoping that his teammate for the upcoming tournament does well. But look, what I want to know is who's going to be the new special guest at Slurpee. Every match, we seem to have someone new. We had Pablo, we had Sato in the last game. Who's next, Paco?
It just seems like anyone who's really willing to take the gamble, because there's almost nothing to lose if you're one of those teams that is playing from a more uncontested position, because again, Momsy, Sato, no one's fighting them at Dirty Dogs. They're just splitting that POI with Teeny and Shark. So it makes sense, but we'll have to see how it all unfolds at the halfway point here, Takata, because game 4 is ready to go.
Not even halfway through this competition yet. Still one more game before we reach that point. The Llama trifecta around Slurpee Swamp. Little care package for Sky and Scroll after that solid match, but it looks like Pablo is going to be the special guest today at Slurpee. Up a can have more of an impact than he did previously.
Right there, though, for Sky early on, but yeah, drawing the attention back towards Slurpee, Vico, Malabuka. They have just been the centerpiece of focus and on the receiving end from everyone else around them. But Vico doesn't even get a chance to get his shields up. He'll be knocked. That is such an unfortunate timing circumstance here. But for IJOP and Marius, they just want the aggression rolling. They want to see if they can get a clean elimination all the way through. Malabuka and Vico will no longer be in the lobby, but if Marius isn't careful, he'll follow suit with the same fate. Shockwave create a little bit of space here, but being absolutely chased down by Pablo now on the other end of things. One elimination already. Pablo just trying to see what else he can get. They're just trying to do what they can. A little bit of placement points, secure some eliminations. Big boost with the 9 points and not expecting the action to really pick up with every single lobby. It's gotta.
Casper picking up picks. They've had fights time and time again up by their drop spot there. And luckily enough, they've been able to perform quite well recently, but now the zone isn't too far either from them. Stevie Saren actually going to pick up a nice little bit of loot here. And you can see this is the slurp map. So if you get tagged a lot, you can almost always recuperate those shields.
Darm Damish, another one of our teams that's just been hovering that top 3 area of the leaderboard. I believe they were just forced out after the results of that last lobby, but any of these teams that are kind of trying to cement themselves inside of that top 10, top 5 position, Takata, they are all fully aware of the fact that just one good game could really be the differentiation between, top 3 versus falling just outside of it. And Damish, Darm, thinking better, not wanting to get aggressive when it's unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about comebacks, not Chaff and Flixie, they've been holding on to top 3 quite well, but Sky and Scroll are outside of the top 10. And in the last match, now they're just 6 points away from being at that top 3 qualifying range to the championship land, but Teeny and Shark now playing it out.
Not only that, but the way that they're rotating here, it seems like they have an inkling of an idea where Twig or Midra might be at. Shark just clearing out everything. But Twig, Midra, they're going to have to play just so incredibly separated from each other. It is looking grim. Not gonna lie, Takata. Can't hold back on any punches here. This is not what you want to see. But
wait, this is bad.
Has no idea. Josh and Wavy are just nestled inside of this building. They've been hovering for so long. Twig never had a chance. Just immediately demolished off that Ranger pump shot. Josh, Wavy.
Oh no.
They'll take full advantage of what they can get. 6 elimination points. And Midro just trapped. He is an absolute rat in a cage right now. And it is so sad to see when you think about their leaderboard positioning, because all they want is to make it into the placement points, Takata.
Yeah. I mean, Twig getting served up an Allier special firsthand. As now his teammates getting pushed by Momsy Sato. As Maijo's doing what he can. Good news is that there is another duo close by. Bad news, they completely left. So now Maijo's just stuck in the 2v1. Gets knocked down, eliminated. As Momsy Sato were able to quickly clean that one up.
If they manage to come back from this position, it would be a phenomenal performance. But Momsy Sato, Josh Wavy, everyone just making full use and clearly showcasing what kind of punishments wait for teams that get eliminated. Just wrong place, wrong time. Makes it all too easy for players who just continue focusing on where you're at. But now Momsy Sato, they've had their fill. They're ready to get moving into the zone.
In the zone though, Pablo Chino looking very comfortable. Good pull on their end. Now they don't have too much to worry about. Darm Damish, though, close by. You can see this hill is not in a kind of area you'd want to get eliminated. It would be basically impossible to reboot back in from here.
Handful of teams also just looking to try and stay ahead. Snosky and Vexy just pulled up, and as the zone pulls, you imagine that they'll follow with it. Scroll and Sky, though, was asking for them to find their rhythm, and a Victor Royale is definitely one way to deliver. Gives them a little bit of momentum to work with.